Welcome to the Bearded Finisher Podcast, your one-stop show for all things finishing and coatings. Your host, Zach, and a variety of industry experts will guide you through the art of perfecting your finishing and business game. From seasoned pros to fresh faces, get ready for tips, tricks, and trends to elevate your knowledge and business to the next level.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. Today's episode, we are going to go the route of distribution. We're going to be talking to Mr. Kyle Hansen. He is with West Hillhurst Paint up in Calgary, right, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm just, wishing probably we had a little more weather like you guys up there. What's it up there right now?
We got our first snowfall yesterday, so
lucky.
We usually try to. Yeah, I personally always try to at least get to Halloween before our first snowfall. I mean, it's not like I can control the weather, but
that's close enough.
Yeah. I mean, we're a week and a half out. I mean, we had a good summer and actually an amazing fall. So, I mean, you can't complain about that.
Well, let's jump in. Like, I know you and I have met at some all pro events. That's originally how we met. And we've kind of talked a little bit and hung out, but I don't know that I've ever heard your story. Like, how did you get into the world of paint? 'Cause you've been in for 4 years now?
6 years, I guess.
6 years.
January would be my, the end of my 5th year. So,
okay. So, I mean, just kind of tell us how it came about and what made you want to be a Benjamin Moore distributor.
Well, I'm a bit of a fish out of water. This long into it, I still joke I wouldn't let anybody pay me to paint their house, but I spent about 15 or 17 odd years on, it depends on what you're counting, in mortgage distribution. So, I spent about the previous 10 years buying the store, wholesaling mortgages through the mortgage broker channel up here in Canada. So, I was working working a rep job, sales job. And, for a little bit of time before that, I did actually spend some time at the head office for a sporting goods company, and managing inventory and stuff like that, it was kind of a cool job. Good job for a young guy. A lot of what I was doing was, forecasting, financial planning, but specific to categories in the sporting goods company, down to like, kids' socks and stuff like that. So, some pretty mundane stuff, but, from time to time we got to work on, forecasting snowboards and skis and stuff like that. So the more fun stuff. But at the end of the day, it was just forecasting and stuff like that. So, but for the better part, I've been, in sales, customer service and stuff like that. After about 10 years of, what I feel was kind of a soul sucking industry. And I mean that with, there's a lot of good people in the industry, but, at the end of the day, I had always planned on being self-employed and doing something that, I always felt created value or that I could add value to people's lives, whatever that was at any given point. And in the 5 years kind of preceding my exit of that industry, I'd been looking at businesses. I looked at everything. And I always kind of go back to, my first few years in the industry. I was in my early 20s and I'd met a Benjamin Moore store owner who actually conveniently still owns the store that's about 5 kilometers away from my store. I ended up doing the mortgages for his whole family. And I remember at the time, it was kind of one of those things you never really think about. Nobody grows up and is like, I want to own a paint store, right? But
Yeah.
right, not like grade 3. There's like you're all the kids are like firefighter. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a movie star. I want to own a paint store.
I want to sell paint.
Yeah, like it is not on anybody's purview. But I remember at the time thinking it was kind of an interesting business, and I ended up buying some paint and wallpaper and stuff from him, over the years. Not that I ever really got to know him at the time, but I always kind of remembered that, and it was always kind of in the back of my head. And when I was looking for for something to do, the store that I currently own now came up for sale, and I knew about the store. I'd been in the store, and it was a matter of about, I saw, this realtor had posted this store for sale. I knew instantly, because usually they try to hide, what business is for sale. I knew instantly what it was. So I phoned that guy within about a half hour from posting the store for sale. And I was like, I need to meet with you like now. And by the end of the day, we had had an offer on the table for the store. The next day we had an accepted offer, and 2 months later, I owned a paint store.
Holy crap. That's fast. 60 days.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's impressive.
And on day one, I tell you what, I came in and, it was like somebody clubbed me in the head with a 2x4. Like I didn't know a thing about anything. And I can tell you, like, my, I've got some long-term staff, and they could tell you, like, it was, like it was a lot of like, who is this guy?
Like, what the heck is going to happen next?
I think not only is this guy supposed to cut our paychecks, but we have to teach him what to do. Like,
it kind of seems like the same feeling that I probably all the people that work at PPG Architectural is having right about now about the private equity that's got an offer on the table to buy them. They're going, what the heck is these people doing?
Hey, you know what? I mean, Berkshire Hathaway bought Benjamin Moore, and I'm sure for a while, they're kind of like, what are they going to do with us? But hopefully, for our business, hopefully, PPG, is such a force. My suspicion is that company will, not that I have any insight other than the press release from last week, but my suspicion is that they'll probably hang back a bit and just kind of see what happens. I don't think.
I mean, they've got a decent amount of holdings. If you go to their website, I was doing some research on them. They've into a little bit of everything. So, hopefully it'll be a long-term investment strategy for them.
Yeah. From the little bit that I read, that kind of seems to be their thing. I don't think that they're the type of company to kind of, chop a business up and piece them off. And, maybe there'll be pieces that are kind of let go of, of that business that, the non-profitable parts. But, I would expect, to some extent, it might be more of a long-term play than a quick flip.
I just keep saying that I really think, and I don't know who I was talking to. It was another Ben Moore guy, but we'll leave him nameless. Ben Moore distributor. But about, I think, 24 was just the beginning of the mergers and acquisitions in the paint world. I feel like next year you're gonna see a lot.
There, I'm very much on the outside looking in. A lot of this stuff. Like I hear rumors and different kind of goings on, but it's always third hand information. By the time it gets to me, you can kind of see that moves are starting to happen. Just little indicators. And what I suspect is that people are kind of jockeying for position a little bit. In a couple of different ways. Like, and in positive ways too. I don't think anybody's really losing their focus by any means. But from what I could see when I got in, and I don't know anything prior to 2019, other than what people have told me. So there wasn't really a significant catalog of stuff that I could look back and go, oh, okay, here's the history of all things Benjamin Moore, and Sherwin-Williams and Cloverdale and whatnot. Again, like, I'm very much a fish out of water. From what I could see, it seemed like at some point, the paint companies were trying to be all things to all people. And I think to some extent, there's a bit of an internal consolidation going on, with product lines and moving into more of a streamlined, focused product line on a manufacturer by manufacturer basis. And I see that as maybe something that can really only benefit the industry, where if you know that one company is really good at something, then you're that's what you're going to look for. Whereas if you've got 5 different Walmarts out there, and try to kind of be all things to all people, too much crossover tends to kind of hurt everybody, right? And that drives margins down. So
Exactly. I think a lot of people just kind of started seeing, oh, well, let's do a little bit of this, like you said, do a little bit of that, and it's like you're absolutely right. People are starting to kind of come into that, do what you do, and be the best at it. Don't just stay in your lane and partner with other manufacturers. Get some strategic partnerships going, but you don't have to make everything. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just because you have the ability or the capacity to do it doesn't mean you should.
It doesn't mean you should. Yes,
and that's something I always try to stay focused on. I mean, I get a dozen emails a week, and maybe even more from new opportunities to bring in something, right? Field marking paint is one I seem to be getting a bunch of emails for, and I don't think I've ever.
Those margins are just absolutely horrendous.
No, I know, and it's one of those things like where and nothing against it. I know that sometimes distributors are casting a wide net, but when I look at it and I go, I've never sold that in my life, and it's a lot better for me to stay in my lane than really try to get into something, unless you're really going to go knee deep into something. You don't kind of you don't want to show up to the party empty handed, right?
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask, like, how, just trying to think how to word this. How do you guys, because you are independent, you're independently owned paint stores, but you have partnered, or not really a franchise, through Benjamin Moore. You carry Benjamin Moore paint. Like, what's the process like for you guys to decide what products other than Benjamin Moore? Do you have a la carte, or is there certain things that you guys can and cannot bring in? Like, how does that work when you're affiliated with a big manufacturer like Benjamin Moore or any of the independent paint distributors?
Well, I can only speak to Benjamin Moore. And I'm not sure how the PPG dealerships work, or I think to some extent Cloverdale, which down in the U.S. is Rhoda Paint. I don't know how their dealerships work.
Now Miller Paint too.
Sorry,
I said now Miller Paint. I guess Rhoda's buying Miller / Coverdale.
I saw that. Yeah. Speaking of moves in architectural, I think. So with Benjamin Moore, we've got to carry kind of a core line of products, which is everything from the your Ben, Regal, and Aura, up to I can't remember how many, but there's about 20 product lines that we've got to carry, in order to kind of fulfill our commitment. And then we've got to certain percentage of our sales have to be Benjamin Moore in order to maintain the name. But we're just a dealer, so we're not a franchise. We don't pay franchise fees, and it's a very good relationship that we've got with Benjamin Moore. Despite the fact that there's no hard cash being distributed or being paid, in terms of a franchise fee or a dealer fee or anything like that. They do a very, very good job of supporting the brand, supporting their network, and supporting the dealers, in a sense of the way that they've set up their distribution channels. So kind of to that, a lot of times there's not a reason why we'd want to look outside of the Benjamin Moore line. What you could say, from the outside looking in, you could, say that's short-sighted. Maybe you're cutting yourself short. Maybe there's products that say PPG has or another manufacturer has. But I've found that within at least my market, I don't have much of a reason to look outside of that for architectural paints. There are some specialty products that we bring in. Stain is one of them, like interior stains. Is not something that Benjamin Moore really carries. So, we carry general finishes and Old Masters. And then also recently having gotten into Renner, that's another coating that we've gotten into where I felt that Benjamin Moore, doesn't have a, 2K poly product, right? So
yeah, they don't much deal with the industrial wood. They stay more architectural. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I'm looking for other product lines, it's to me something that would be complementary to what our core is, our core being Benjamin Moore, and then, things that I can build on where there's either kind of crossover, a contractor that's going to paint a wall, but then also, do the kitchen cabinets, may want to use Real for the walls and Renner for the cabinets. So that's where when I'm trying to build our kind of internal lineup, I'm trying to ensure that I'm not crossing over too many product lines for a couple of reasons. One is it's hard to sell. Like, you can't have 10 different products that are the same, or that have so much crossover that how do you build a point of differentiation, and then within that, how do you create value with those products when they all kind of do the same thing at the end of the day? So if I'm looking to bring something in or add to our lineup, it's got to be something that is different enough that there's value, and that there's enough demand for it, and then that there's enough differentiation from what I've already got.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm trying to think of how to word this question. As far as getting into the store, when you purchased that store, because it was an existing store, does Benjamin Moore offer anything in the way of, I mean, not like any particular situation, do they offer, like for guys out there that might be saying, hey, this looks like a cool business to get into that are in the community, is it something that Benjamin Moore helps them? If someone's wanting to buy a store, maybe help you sell and help someone else buy the store? Like,
well, I know that they've got a new entrepreneur program, and I don't know, because I bought an existing location. It was really Benjamin Moore was kind of the second part of the equation, when you're buying an existing store. But I do know that they've got a very good, I believe it's called the New Entrepreneur Program, and I don't know what the qualification is for that, because I am now not somebody that would qualify as a new entrepreneur.
You're not new anymore. You're an old guy. That's like you're the old AT&T customer. We're not giving you a discount.
Yeah, pretty much. So they do have a program that I can't speak to the details of that, but I do know that in terms of if somebody fits what they're looking for, I believe that they've got a good setup for people getting into it. You're not hung out to dry. So,
and the other thing that I was just thinking about is, what a lot of people don't think about is I've been into a lot of paint stores, been more all kinds of distributors, like all the stuff that you have to carry as a distributor, because you have to have what people need: wall paint, trim paint, ceiling paint, the different brands besides that are in the same manufacturer, the different sheens, the different bases. And maybe you can kind of, if Ben Moore has a way to balance that, like that's a crap ton of inventory. And typically all paint, I mean, and this is that gray area, every paint manufacturer will either put on their website or on a can, like 2 years typically, or 3 years is the amount of time. Like that seems like a lot of liquid inventory to try and juggle.
I think there's some people around me that are sick of hearing me joke, and it's half a joke that my savings account is sitting in paint cans.
I don't doubt it,
but that's not bad in a sense. So, I've kind of come to the realization in the last year or so that as much as we're in the paint business and the customer service business, you're also really in the inventory business. And being able to tightly manage your inventory is key to maintaining your cash flow, which is huge. I mean, you don't want to get stuck with, some paint line that is it's never gonna sell. And it also ties up your capital, right? So, if you got a slow month and you're going to pay the energy bill, well, you're kind of going to be hoping that somebody walks through the door to buy some obscure paint line that you actually bought too much of.
Because the paint companies won't let you pay with paint, or the electric company won't let you give them free paint.
No. No. So, one of the key facets of running a store like this is that you've got a fairly wide breadth of inventory that you do have to carry. Like you said, so it could be about 30 different lines of paint. And then within those lines of paint, you've got different bases, right? You've got your light base, your mid-tone, and your deep bases. And that's the art and the science of running a store like this. Any store for that matter is inventory. If you're running a liquor store or a clothing store, same thing. I mean, you've got to turn that inventory over in order to get your return and your dollars back, so that you can take that money and move it into something else that's going to sell or replenish your inventory. So it's one of those things that I think takes a little bit for everybody to learn, because it's not like you can just drop in a store and know exactly what's going to sell in a market. And this actually goes back to, in my mind anyway, when I was, managing, doing merchandise planning and forecasting and such. They were opening stores all the time. And these were big, 20 or 30,000 square foot sporting goods stores. And, when they would use a like store, in a market. So they, say they're opening a store in, East End of Toronto, they would find a store that's got a similar demographic and go, okay, we've got to, kind of get the initial inventory here in order to open the store. So we got to have, X amount of stock, and then we've got to have backup stock in order to kind of get there. But in order to drive the turns, we can't, be sitting on snowboards in the middle of
July.
The middle of July, right? Like, not only is that a waste of capital, but it's also taking up space in a stock room that could otherwise be used for soccer balls or whatever else, right? So when you're, it's so kind of going back to when you open a Betcha More store, I don't know what there is with respect to that, but if I were opening a store, I would think going with the minimum amount possible in order to the minimum amount possible with the most popular product lines would be key to at least kind of getting you started. So if I was opening a store, I would not in a million years bring in, 40 gallons of pool paint in our market.
Yeah, that's
Maybe not in
probably a
Texas.
wise decision. I mean, even in Texas, I don't know. The most people were painting pools. What's interesting though is, man, I don't even remember the guy's name. When I was on the manufacturing side, I was talking to a distributor. He was in the U.S. and he was going to bring in our product. And he was new, and is a new Benjamin Moore store. And I have to give, he sent me the packet that he was supplied on demographics and like all the models that Benjamin Moore runs before they approve a new distributor or a location. Holy crap. Like their, I don't know what you would call it, like store development team. I mean, that packet, I don't even know how many hundreds of pages it was with graphs and income and competing stores and what their annual sales are based on taxes and P&L statements from the other I mean, it was absolutely one of the most in-depth deep dives I've ever seen for any type of retail store. It was crazy.
I mean, a company like Benjamin Moore, even Sherwin-Williams, I mean, they're not they're not stupid with their money, and they would make decisions based on, this is me assuming this, but they would make decisions based on data, and there's a significant amount of data available. I would think it's fairly easy to forecast the size of the paint business, in general, especially architectural coatings. Like I wouldn't know, but they could very easily figure out how many times somebody's going to paint their house in any given time, who the key demographic is, and they could look at a market and say, okay, well, these, this percentage of people in this market
are our customers, and they make this much a year. So if one store does this much, then we can have X amount of stores in this market and put them X amount of square miles apart. I mean, it's crazy. I just saw one packet and it was nuts.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I've always thought getting into, I'm not a big fan of retail. And that's just, it's been beat into me from previous mentors. It's just stay out of retail. But I've long thought since I was like, man, I think having a paint store would be kind of fun, until it comes to wrapping my brain around the inventory management. And I'm like, you just got to have one hell of an ERP software to be able to track all of that. And then that just brings in that whole, I just start going south. I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm out on the paint store world.
One of the things I think our industry lacks is any sort of a inventory forecasting program. And I have looked at this. I've developed my own in-house, but I guess one thing is you don't want to get too granular when you're looking at your inventory. You can, but it's not going to benefit you to figure out how many 1-inch paintbrushes to bring in. On a macro scale though, breaking down and if there is a good way to forecast based on a trend. So if you're trending up, 10% on, say, interior wall paint, you should be able to say, okay, well, if I'm kind of going like this, my brush sales may go like this for whatever reason.
One would think, like if you have got a coating advance trending upwards, one would assume that a 2.5-inch angled brush is going to trend upwards as well. Like a software that could grab that. I mean, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So whether or not that would be valuable, is the other question. But I see a lot of yeah, store owners who just kind of know how to stock their store properly. I think that's the art of retail in a business like ours. It's not easy to be successful, but I feel like after a while you kind of understand the flow of things, and you just kind of get a good sense for for what people want, and what the value is. And a lot of that, comes from understanding the value that you're providing to your customers and understanding your customers. And so with that, then you kind of inherently know what, what products and what breadth of product, how many different paintbrushes or rollers or whatever it is you should carry.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I never thought about that, but you saying that right there just makes me think of, I've talking to potential clients. I do coaching for painting contractors, and talking to these guys who are new in the industry or a year or 2 years old, and they're wanting to, try to become better at estimating or get more jobs. And you saying that, and I'm sitting here thinking about talking to these contractors, and I'm like, well, how do you go, how long does it take you to do a bid on the interior of a house? I'm like, well, I got to measure every wall, all the footprint. I got to know the trim size. And I'm like, that's just nuts. Why? And they're like, what do you mean, why? I'm like, I can do a whole house estimate in like 20 minutes. Like, I can go into a room but it's like you said, the guys you just know, like, I just know it's going to take my guys about an hour to mask this trim. It's going to take them about 30 minutes to caulk the trim. It's going to take them about roughly an hour to sand all these walls, and 4 hours to roll 2 coats on, 2 hours per coat in this room. And I can go room by room and break it down. And how much trim paint am I going to need? Well, I mean, I know that 2 coats is about a garage door. Is a gallon. A gallon of paint is about a garage door. So if I visualize a garage door in my head and put it on the wall, I can go through real quick and know how many gallons of paint I'm going to need for a job. I mean, thinking that the same way on the owning the paint store, like, you just know what your guys are going to come in by. It's very similar, but it's something that it has to be developed over time. And it's probably something that's hard to pass on. Like, if you go sell the store, like, you buy in a store, that's all stuff that you have to refigure out.
Absolutely.
Because you can't get inside his head and be like, no, I need all of that.
Yeah, you can't exactly sit down and be like, here's 10 years of Excel spreadsheets that won't make sense to you, and probably don't make sense to me. So, but that's I always say, like, there's the cash equity in a business, and then there's the personal equity in the business, and that's the personal equity is that art that you're talking about, and I know those contractors who are exceptional at going into a house, and they just know it's going to be 10 gallons, or it's going to be 8, but I better buy 10 just in case, you spill a little bit or whatever, right? Or, whatever issue or whatever. It's nice to just not have to, yeah. And then, at the same time, you can tell when somebody's a little bit newer and they're still kind of feeling it out. And, it's one of those things where I'm the last person in the world who would want to walk into a house and say, you're going to need 5 gallons for this, because chances are I'm going to say you need 3 and it's going to be 8 that you needed, right? I don't want to oversell anybody, but, there's very much a learn by doing, and the more you learn by doing, the more equity you build. And that's, part of the value chain that you end up passing on to your customers. And that's where you build the value in whatever it is that you're doing, be it painting, spraying, or owning a paint store. Right. So,
yeah, that's some good advice. So 6 years in, you're about to be on your 6th year. You got somebody out there saying, I think I want to get into the paint store business. What's a lesson you learned the hard way that you might, piece of advice, don't do this, or you should do this?
The biggest thing that I learned, and this is, it was kind of part of that school of hard knocks, is to, we could always talk about my first misstint, but
that's a whole nother episode.
I think the most important thing is to try to absorb as much as possible. So what I learned fairly quickly, I didn't come into this thinking I knew everything, but I realized the further I got into it, the less I knew. So there were some things that I kind of brought with me, customer service and whatnot from, past jobs, but it really, really took me until about my 3rd year, even my 4th year, until I truly felt like I knew what I was doing. And then it wasn't, so maybe mid part of last year, I really, really felt like I had my both feet on the ground and I could be running at any given point. So, the advice that I would give to anybody is to not overestimate what you think you know. Yeah. And hang in the back. There's nothing wrong with hanging in the back. And then the other thing that and this is something I've always kind of taken with me, is you've got to kind of build your net. And your net, in my mind, are the people who you surround yourself with, who kind of, you carry them and they carry you. And that's, your suppliers, your customers, your long-term customers who are going to come in week after week. Build that net and get a feedback loop as to, what's going on. And that's everything from how's the customer service today? Follow-ups, figuring out what's going on in the industry, what's coming out, what's changing, and just keep your hand on the pulse on both ends.
That reminds me a lot of an old coach or a mentor that I had when I used to work at Avis, and he used to preach, you never, ever want to be the smartest person in the room. Don't make this mistake and be the smartest person in the room, because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in trouble. Like, you always want to surround yourself with people that you can learn from, because once you stop learning, you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep asking questions, and never be afraid to ask a question, right?
Agreed.
And lean on the people that work with your business. That's the most important thing. And it might take a while until you really figure that out. I felt like when I came into this business, 6 months, a year, I'd have it figured out. And I was like, hey, I got this. And then a year later, I'm like, oh, wow. It's a longer arc than what I anticipated. And what I've learned with this business, and I still kind of carry it with me today and how I do my buying and whatnot, is that everything has an arc, and that arc, is whatever it is unique to your business. And you've got to figure out what that arc is and how it relates to your business in the sense of your cycles. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought on this.
I think what I'm hearing is, knowing the cycles, knowing the peaks and the valleys. One, for inventory control, I would think that would be huge, because if you buy, a crap ton of exterior paint because it's on sale starting December 1st.
Yes, exactly.
You got to know the products. You got to know when they're going to be used seasonally, whatever that may be. I could see that being a huge balance in that world, because if you make that mistake, I bet that's one you probably only do once.
Yeah. Always keep your SKUs in line.
So you mentioned tinting. Does Benjamin Moore have any sort, I can just hear every paint contractor listening to this and they're just yelling answers right now. Does Benjamin Moore offer any sort of, training that for tinting, custom color matching? I mean, or is it a learn as you go type of deal, or is there like a training program that you have to go through when you buy a store?
They've actually got a very, very significant library of courses you can take. It's all online. The other thing is when you do buy a store, there is a couple of weeks of training you can do down in New Jersey as well, which is very hands-on and in-depth. And then, of course, within Benjamin Moore, you've got your reps and whatnot who you can lean on for information. So there is a lot of support, and that's where you've got to kind of just dig into it and just know you're not going to know anything for a while, and at some point you're going to figure it out. But it's talking in general terms. When I got into paint, I remember just kind of sitting behind the front counter and watching my staff talk about Regal, but I tend to refer to it in product code. So K549, or I need 2 gallons of 549 and a whatever. And I was like, oh wow, this is not flipping burgers. And then getting into color matching and stuff like that, like talking about what the different yellows do and how that affects the color. Again, talking in general terms, there is some training to that, but there's the science, and that's where you can learn it. You can listen to the courses, you can do whatever, but then there's the art of it, and that is what takes time to build that equity. And a lot of it is just by doing it.
That's what's amazed me is watching guys tint paint. I'm telling you, just sitting at the paint store and seeing a new guy doing a little drawdown, matching a gallon of paint to a piece of fabric or something. Spectrum was everywhere. I mean, they were everywhere where I had my company. So I knew all the store managers. All the store managers were my best friends. I mean, bring them anything they want so I could get my paint early, be first on the delivery truck. I mean, you got to play the game. But just watching these guys come in, and I'm bottom 5% of matchers, since I started doing my own color matching. But just watching these guys, like you say, it just takes time. That have been there for 15 years, and new guy's been there for a year, and he's like, Jeremy, take a look at this. Here's what I did, and here's it is. And he'd just be like, and he'd just take it and he'd turn it and he'd be like, put 2 drops of burnt umber, half a drop of black, and like a drop of orange something, and it'd be perfect. And I'm just like, how the hell do you do that? Like, if you could figure out how to teach that, like, you could make so much money just teaching classes, because it's such a lost art.
There is a way to teach it, but there isn't, without it being hands-on and just sitting there and going, letting, you kind of have to let somebody fail and figure it out. Like you can sit there and you can coach and be like, well, you just add a little bit of orange, add a little bit of red, take the red out, take the white out, whatever it is. But you kind of need them to screw up a bunch of times until they kind of figure it out. And somebody who's resilient will eventually just kind of go, okay, well, last time I overshot on red. and it just threw the match off. We couldn't save it. So I'm going to dial it back and I'm going to inch up to it. And, after a few times where they inch up just, an eighth of a shot, eighth of a shot, eighth of a shot. And they go, okay, great. Next time I think I could probably just dump a half shot in there and just, and just call it a day. Right.
That's this guy right here. I'm going to walk into every single color when I'm doing color matches because like the intensity is just always throws me off. I mean, it takes me forever to match a color. By God, I'll get it. But, for that, half gallon of, or that gallon of weird hunter green, I might have worked on it for an hour and a half, but it's going to be good.
Well, the store manager that I've got, she has a reputation of being one of the, and would try to not put it out there too much because then we end up with a lineup of matches Monday morning. But got such an eye that there's a reputation in the city, and people will drive across the city for a match. And finding a good color matcher is something you don't see that all the time. Somebody who's got that just, where the science no longer matters. And they just know you just a little bit of that and a little bit of that. I'm not even going to look at it. It's going out the door.
I don't even need to put it in the Spectro. I know I can. Yeah. Not doing it. And I mean, I talked to a guy, who's up in the Minneapolis area who I'm going to go see him for a class and just kind of watch and learn. But, he's a firm believer that if you have that skill set, you can pretty much name your price in the paint world. Like, I mean, if you want $30 an hour, you'll get it in the right market. I mean, because it's so hard to find. I mean, it is a true unicorn for someone that can come in and understands color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, we've all seen those matches, and I'm nothing against, whoever's doing the match, but, somebody comes in and they've got a match from another location, be it a competitor or not. And it's, it's so far off that you wouldn't even consider it to be in that color family. And, it's fine to let people learn, but, at the same time, there should be somebody who's kind of standing in the background, making sure that even if they did screw up, you're going to step in and at least get the customer what they want.
That's true. I mean, color world is, and still like I'll take, and I tell guys, we're talking to, crap, I remember who it was. Maybe it was Nick. I'll to this day, I will still take a pigmented match any day of the week over a stain. And guys like, oh, I love stain. And I'm like, bleh. Like, I love the look of stain. I do not want to match a stain. I did a short stint of it. And I mean, that may be highly contributed to why my hair started falling out and I decided to shave my head, because to understanding wood species and the undertones that are in the wood, and then how to cancel the undertones, and then how to make a stain that complements the cancellation of the undertones to get the color that you want. And I'm just like, I'm out. You pick white or gray or something like that, but I'm out.
You want all black? You have carbon black.
Yeah, we can do a black stain.
Actually, going back to talking about an arc, in terms of product lines and such, is we've recently gotten into stain matching. It's something that we've never touched. And we've been at it for about 6 months, but it's not anything where I feel comfortable selling a product to somebody. So we've got, I've got a spray setup in the back for doing spray stain matches, and then also a wiping base stain. And basically it's been a 6-month learning curve. And in terms of, talking about an arc, especially when you bring in a product line, that learning curve is really what's going to drive, the success of a product line. And so understanding the depth of what you're trying to do. Stain matches they can be easy, but for the better part, if you're trying to match the same color to two different wood species, I mean, yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I know that there are people out there who could make those two species of wood look like they came off the same tree.
Yeah, I mean, the microlith or micronized pigment stains in the water base, and I know the water base stain is the technology behind it is hands down the best stain color matching technology, and how they're grinding the pigments to get those color uniformity against species. I mean, it's amazing, but there is, I mean, you get that down, because I really think stain is coming back. I mean, it's all cyclical. It's all gonna, you know, goes from pigmented to stain back and forth all the time. But I think we're flipping back to that trend of stained cabinets, and I think the guys that really nail down the water-based stains, even solvent for that matter, but especially with the water-based technology getting so popular, you really nail down the water-based stain matching, and sky's the limit, man, because not everyone's going to do it. It's kind of like, to me, water-based coatings in general right now. I mean, they are extremely popular. Everyone's converting to them. One, because the price of solvent-based wood coatings isn't going to go back to where it was. So if you don't have to smell it and you can be around the same cost, then why not? But the learning curve, it's getting better to go from solvent to water. It's from when I was spraying and finishing and had my company, it's leaps and bounds better now, but there's still a learning curve. If you're used to spraying lacquer and then trying to switch over to an industrial water-based product, it's not something you can go lacquer pre-cat kitchen 1 week and water-based kitchen the next week and it's going to work perfect. Like, we're not there yet. So the guys that have nailed it and mastered it, I think, you've got your social media guys, but even some guys that aren't on social media that spent the last 7 to 10 years really mastering the water-based coatings. Dude, they're just killing it right now.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I mean, those guys are just killing it.
Yep. You're seeing, I feel like we're kind of on the precipice of where, we're going to start moving into more water-based coatings. When I first bought the store, I think we had a couple of gallons of Lenmar Duralac kicking around. And, again, me not knowing anything, and I'm still trying to figure out the industry. And I talked to a couple of contractors, and they just said, like, well, why would I buy that at, $60 a gallon and I can get a gallon of lacquer for 15? That also doesn't have problems. and you can turn that stuff around in a third of the time that you can water-based coating. And when I got into it, it just wasn't there. And it's not that those coatings didn't exist, but they I don't know if the industry was really ready for it, at least in Calgary anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that time ago, I would say it was really similar, because that's when we, probably about 10 years ago, is when I really started telling my guys, hey, you got to figure this water-based stuff out. We've got to figure it out. It's coming. And my guys hated me for it. I mean, they could spray a set of kitchen cabinets and they'd look like glass. And then I give them water-based coating and there's like, I don't know, a dozen runs in it. They're like,
then you go to the paint store and they tell you user error.
Oh man, they used to get so mad at me. But now the guy that I sold my company to, he was my foreman at the time, my right-hand man. And, he's killing it in water-based coatings in that market. So
they've kind of gained, in terms of usability and, the benefits, to some extent, you're seeing similar products in water-based that you are the old solvent base, and nothing against solvent. I think everything's got a purpose, and everything's got a place in the market. What I'm starting to see, so 2 years in, having carried Renner, what I see is that there's kind of a divide. So there's, your core group of people who have used solvent, and they will continue to use solvent, and that is their business. That is how they built their business. And in order to turn that ship, it's just not feasible without, significant change, without looking at that arc and going, okay, well, what do I have to do? Well,
without government interference.
Yeah, without a significant reason to do it, right? Like, for a mid-sized company to make that switch, like it could be a fairly significant change, and managing that change, for somebody that doesn't have the resources to do the training and whatnot, or as any small business owner knows, the time to do it. It would be a lot easier to run uphill, trying to pull your truck with you,
Yeah.
than to make that change sometimes. And but so what I'm seeing is that there's a younger kind of echelon of people coming into the industry who don't even want to look at solvent. And I think that's where water-based is going to kind of start to take off, and that you kind of see a split where solvent kind of maintains its its position in the industry, but water-based tends to grow as the industry demographics start to turn over a little bit.
Agreed. Yeah. I think you're right. The older guys are sticking with the solvent, which is, I still like solvent coatings, but the ease of use on the water base is definitely there. I was actually just talking to a guy this morning, woke up to like 3 messages in my IG about somebody that, their boss told them they had to switch to water base, and sent me pictures, and it was just, the typical disaster.
It looked like a water-based coating is what you're saying.
Yeah, it looked like a water-based coating. It was one of those, I figured it wouldn't be. I've heard people say this is the closest to pre-cat, and I sprayed it just like pre-cat, and it doesn't look like pre-cat. Yeah, I get it, but no, it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, man. Well, what about any last bit of advice? I know we're getting an hour and you've got stuff to do, but any last bit of advice to anybody out there thinking about whether it be resources or just, friendly advice of somebody wanting to get into the distribution world on the paint side?
I think the biggest thing is to get to know the people that you're working with, that you're going to be working with, and really, treat it like a job interview. Understand where the distribution is coming from for your products, and get to know get to know your supply chain, get to know who your customers are going to be, and just have an idea. It can be daunting to think about, opening a store and how am I going to make money to cover rent or make payroll or whatever. And how much money do I need to have in the bank, and when am I going to break even? Right. So get to know everybody that you can, be it other store owners, friendly store owners, try to reach out to some contractors, not necessarily to sell to them, but just understand, if they were going to buy a gallon of paint, would they consider the product that you're going to carry? And if not, why? So why do they, so get to know the market, get to know the people in the market, and, base your decision on facts, as best as you can.
That's good. That's awesome advice. I like that. Yeah. Talking to people out there, ask them what they're using, if they use yours, and if not, why. Those are all great tips, man. That's good.
Well, and get to know your supply chain. The supply chain is really, what's going to feed your store, right? gotta keep the store pumping.
That is true. You got to keep it going. Well, what about you've listened to some of my episodes? My final question. Well, let me ask you this before I get to that. I know we gotta go, but as someone who's listened to the show, what's something or topic or person that you think would be a good guest on the show, or a topic to get into discussion?
That's a good one because you've covered quite a few. Oh man, it doesn't take much to catch me off guard, but
that one just, I was just thinking, man, I need to figure out how to get, because I mean, there's a lot of topics everyone wants to discuss, and I try to, like you said, I try to get them all, but like, some people are more interested in, I mean, I had Jake on here, a chemist, and I mean, I can geek out about the chemistry behind paint just about as good as anybody and go down that rabbit hole real deep. But then you got some people who, don't care about that. They want to know how to make it look prettier, how to do high end finishes. I don't know. I'm just, always looking for more ideas to get more people involved in the community and the industry in general.
you know what I would love to see is somebody somebody in the coatings world who's been with a major manufacturer for 10, 15 years, 20 years even, who can speak to the changes that they've seen over the last bit, and just an idea of where things are going. Because at the beginning when we were talking about we think there's going to be some change. I would love to hear from somebody that has maybe a bit of insight. Maybe they can't speak to it, but maybe has a feeling as to what we're going to see in 5, 10, 15 years.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. Okay, I like that.
The greatest thing about our industry that I feel, despite it feels big, but it's a very, very small industry. And the more I get ingrained into it, it's a very small, tight knit industry from uh, people that own paint stores to applicators to people on the manufacturing side. And, I feel to some extent that people that I'm really getting to know now are the same people that I'm going to be, chatting with at a show in 20 years. And I've seen that, like at the show in Orlando, the All Pro show. There's a group of guys that have been, they're golf buddies now, but they've been chatting with each other and hanging out, and they're old buddies going back 30 years. And I think that's great. I look forward to being that guy in 15, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from somebody on the manufacturing side as to just get some insights as to what's going on.
Okay, I'll see if I can dig up someone on the manufacturing side for one of the big ones that's been doing it for a while to share some insights. And that's a good one. All right, I'll have to work on that one. Have to find a contact.
I don't have a direct line to any C-suite offices, so I'm not much help there. I'm probably scrounge LinkedIn for an email address.
Yeah, I need some of those chemists over at Benjamin Moore. The ones under lock and key. I need those guys to come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about one last the final questions before we wrap up? To get the community knowing people, creating those relationships. What's something about Kyle that might surprise everyone, and or a hobby not involving painting or the sales of paint?
Outside of work, my other full-time job is I've got a couple of wonderful young boys who actually love the fact that I own a paint store. They when we joked, nobody in grade 3 is talking about owning a paint store. I've actually got one of those kids, but no, but my other full time job is raising my kids, and I spend as much time with him as I can. Every now and again, I can sit down, and I would be at very best an amateur guitar player, and I sometimes find myself at about 10 o'clock on a Friday night, trying to figure out a tune,
nice,
just to kick off the weekend, or finish off the weekend and go into a weekend. So that would be my one little hobby that I keep tucked away in the corner of the basement.
I was like, we're breaking that out at the next All Pro show. I'm gonna make sure somebody's got a guitar.
If you want to sing lead, I'll
we won't have anyone around us. Just ask my wife. There won't be a soul around us if I'm singing lead. I can guarantee you that one.
I'm sure there's a karaoke bar somewhere around the next show.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Man,
we'll get Chad on drums.
There we go. We'll have a band centered around the paint industry. We'll never sell paint again. We'll run them all out of town.
Go on tour.
Oh man. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on, Kyle. This was awesome. The insight in the distributor world was awesome. Give everybody, let's grow your social media following. We know that's huge. Shoot out your Instagram, both for West Hill Hurst and if you have a personal one.
I have not been my personal one since before I bought the store. It's at West Hill Hurst Paint. It has been accused of being the most dad-like Instagram page, but I like to keep it that way.
I like it. Dad-like Instagram page. I like that. That's good.
I was going to say, I appreciate you having me on the show. I've always appreciated the times of chat.
I appreciate you coming on. We got to stay in touch for sure. Hopefully I'll get to see you at the next All Pro show. Everybody, man, I thank you guys for listening. You don't know how much I appreciate you guys showing the love and listening to the show. Make sure you're subscribing, and we will see everybody next week. Have a good one.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Bearded Finisher Podcast. We thank everyone for joining. Keep hustling, keep learning, and never settle for anything less than your best. Remember, the path to perfection is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.